Because I know eventually it's going to kill me. All of us have those little things in our life that we just got to cut it off. And you got to find the source of it. Sometimes the source of it is a person you're around. Sometimes the source of it could be something that you read or something you watch or just something that you brood on and think about. Those things have to die. They have to change. There are things that have to change inside of you for that to happen. Look at Romans chapter 6. I'm going to finish up with 2 more scriptures here. Oh, wow. I haven't went that long, have I? Cool. Never mind. I'm going to preach longer. No, I'm joking. This is Romans chapter 6. This is the death chapter in Romans. I love this chapter here. This is really good. Jesus talked about death, and here's Paul talking about it here. And look at this. In Romans chapter 6, I'm going to start in verse 2. Paul says, "How shall we who died to sin live to it any longer? Or do you not know, those of you who were baptized into Christ were baptized into his death? Therefore, having been buried with him through baptism into death, in order that just as Christ was raised from the dead through the glory of the Father, so we might walk in newness of life." It's easy to read past that. You know what he just said there? Look at this. Let's read it again. Do you not know, in verse 3, do you not know those who were baptized into Jesus Christ have been baptized into his death? Therefore, just as you have been buried with him through baptism into death, in order that as Christ was raised from the dead through the glory of the Father, so we might walk in the newness of life. Do you know what baptism is all about? I mean, it's funny because people, they get so caught up on it and they kind of miss the whole point. It's an outward symbol. It's representing something. But what is it representing? It represents that we shared in the death of Christ. That as Christ died, how did Christ die? Christ died once and for all to sin. Once and for all. Every single sin that has ever been committed, past, present, and future, was put on the body of Jesus Christ as he hung from that cross. And when he died as that person, that sinner. He represented everything that ever could have happened in this world that was sin. So when we are baptized, we're basically saying, I'm in the same way that Christ died as a sinner, I'm dying as a sinner right now. And when I come up from this water, that was the representation of baptism, just as Christ was raised from the dead, to walk in newness of life. The same power that rose Jesus from the dead. I want you to think about this. The same power that rose Jesus from the dead. When you become a Christian, you died to that old sin, that stuff that had you bound, that body of death. And you rose to a new life, just like Jesus rose. So that same power is inside of you right now. That resurrection power. The same power that rose Jesus from the dead. Now, okay, look at this. For if we have become united, verse 5, if we become united with him in the likeness of his death, certainly also in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this is something you need to know here, that our old self was crucified with him, that the body of sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves to sin, that our body of sin might be done away with. Knowing this is awesome. I like how Paul says it. He goes, I've been crucified with Christ in Galatians 2. He says, nevertheless I live, not I, but Christ that lives within me. So the life that I now live in the body, I live by the faith of the Son of God. So when we crucify, what's that mean to crucify? It means to take those things, that old self, that old way of living. What was the old way of living? I'm going to throw something in here that's going to give you a little curveball here. The old way of living said, I need to do this, 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 and this so I'm good enough. Right? I mean, that's how our life works. If I want to get a promotion, I've got to do this, this, and this, and if I do enough stuff, my boss is going to like me, I get a promotion. That's the old way. That's the world system. You work, Garden of Eden, Adam fell. What was the first thing God said? You're going to have to go out and you're going to have to work. What was it like before the fall? Adam would just walk up and pick fruit off the tree. That's all he had to tend the garden. He didn't have to work. He just tended to it. It said that the water would bubble up from the ground and water the plants. He didn't have to water the plants. God set up a natural sprinkler system in the Garden of Eden. But then after the fall, God said, you're going to have to work, and like it's the sweat of your brow. You're going to be sweating. It's going to be hard work. And the only way you're going to get anything is if you work hard. And that's the mentality that we've had. The only way we're ever going to be saved, that's our thought. The only way I'm ever going to be good enough for God is if I work hard. I've got to work on this sin. Oh man, I keep doing this, and this. I got to work on this. I got to work on that. I got to do this. That is the old self. That is the old way of thinking. That is not God's way. God's way is not work your butt off and just hopefully He might accept. No. God's way is the faith way. God's way is say, look, Jesus worked enough. He did everything He needed to do to take care of everything. The body of sin is done away with once and for all. All we do is come to Christ and say, here I am. Just as I am. Here I am. Get rid of this. So now how do we deal with sin now? We come to Christ and say, Jesus, help me. Help me to get rid of these things. Show me the things I need to do. And then you put your faith in Him. You believe and trust that He's going to do what it takes to take care of those things. He's going to tell you. He might say something. It's funny because a lot of times we'll say, God, I'm just really struggling with being, let's say you have a problem with your mouth. You're always saying negative stuff. I'm just so, I'm struggling with all this negative stuff. And God says, you need to stop hanging around with so-and-so. And then you're like, well, she's not that bad, or he's not that bad, and then you start adjusting, and then I'm just going to work on it, and I'm just going to watch what I say, and then you try to correct yourself, and you can't do it, Or, for instance, you're struggling with, some sort of sin, and you're just like, God, I can't help, I always want to steal, I want to steal something, every time I see this, I want to steal this, or whatever, and, God says, well, you need to stop, get away from these people, get away from this stuff, and you're like, oh, no, well, I can try to do it my best, and then you try your hardest, and it doesn't work, I always run into people that tell me, oh, I tried that Christianity stuff. You ever heard that before? I tried that Christian stuff. It was too hard. Yeah, because that wasn't Christian stuff. That was religion. Religion is hard. I'll tell you what, I would never make it as a religious person. You just can't do it. You can never do enough. You can never do enough. Look at this in verse 6. It says, knowing this, that our old self was crucified with Him, that the body of sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves to sin. As long as you try to do things on your own, as long as you try to make things work on your own, as long as you try to earn your salvation, you will always be a slave to sin. Paul says this in the next chapter. He says, all the things that I want to do, I can't. I keep trying to do these things, but I can't do it. The things that I don't want to do, I keep doing them. He's like, so I see this war raging inside of me. He said, and I love how he says in that scripture, in verse 24, chapter 7, he says, oh, wretched man that I am. That word wretch, when you say the word wretch, what do you think of? When somebody retches, like they're throwing up, right? Oh, wretched, actually the Greek word, the wretch, it was like this disgusting, horrible creature. It was like a zombie almost, he was this disgusting creature. He was this mess. Because all this stuff was going on, and he was trying to make this work, and it just didn't work. And that's where he says, who will save me from this body of death? I got this dead body tied from me. Who's going to save me? How am I going to get rid of this thing? Jesus says, he goes, step up to the cross. Bow down to Jesus and say, Jesus, I need you to deal with this. I need you to take care of this. I'm giving this over to you. Paul says, the life that I live in my body, I live by the faith of the Son of God. God's faith, the ability to believe God and trust Him that He will take care of those things, and He will tell you what you need to do. And trust Him in every way. Whatever it may be. And like I said, it's sad, but there's times that you've got to get rid of stuff. You've got to kill those things. You've got to just get rid of them in your life. Where God says you just got to step away from that. You got to walk away from it. I was thinking about, cancer, and how horrible, cancer is and what people have to go through to get rid of it. And what if you found out you had cancer and the doctor told you, you need chemotherapy, and you, no, I don't want to kill anything inside of me. I want to keep it, it needs to live. When chemotherapy kills you inside, it just kills just enough to where you don't die. That's pretty radical, and that's crazy. But there are times in your life where God says you need to kill that. You need to get rid of that stuff in your life. That thing, that disbelief, that religion that you're holding on to, that idea that, you need to, you gotta let it die. And that's the whole point of this message. And I'm going to finish up with this. When it comes to New Year's, we always think about things we want to do differently, we want to change. I always look at it this way. Right before New Year's, end of 2008, it's getting ready to die. I was telling you about the whole Christmas story and how much death is involved in it. There's so much death, in this thing. There's the time to die. There's a time that you got to step back and say, there are things in my life that I need to change. There are things in my life that I want to do differently. I want next year to be a different year.